Roberts, you have the floor.
TGA? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. My questions are to the TGA. In the last Senate estimates, I asked Adjunct Professor Skerritt if the TGA was inquiring into the opportunity presented by albucidin, a natural antibacterial derived from a sugarcane virus that does not cause antimicrobial resistance. Dr. Skerritt's response, quote, "We are very closely monitoring the science. In fact, I'm the keynote speaker next Thursday at the Australian Antimicrobial Congress. We haven't had a submission relating to that product because it's still very early days, but we are monitoring because antimicrobial resistance is a serious threat." End of quote. I was concerned that was a non-answer, so I asked the Minister in questions on Notice 1449. His response was, quote, "The Department of Health is not conducting a review into albucidin." End of quote. Can you clear this up, please? Are you treating albucidin as a prospective revelation in the battle against antimicrobial resistance, thoroughly deserving of active research and development?
Happy to try that one if you like. Thank you, Senator Roberts. Robin Langham, I'm the Chief Medical Advisor to the Health Products Regulation Group. The normal manner in which the TGA evaluates and assesses a product for use is through a process whereby a sponsor brings us a product with all of the relevant research, clinical trials, a dossier of its safety and quality. And that's not happened at this stage. And so until someone comes to us with this, we're not able to do anything in terms of furthering what could potentially be a really important treatment. We're not able to further that in terms of making it available to the public.
Thank you. Secretary, does the Department of Health have any role or any ability, any authority to sponsor?
Generally, no. We wouldn't. Occasionally we have taken the role of sponsoring in very difficult circumstances when there's a drug that's registered and available and the sponsor doesn't want to sponsor it. But in an experimental new drug, we would never take that role. Occasionally, there are avenues for us to support drug development through MRFF and NHMRC research. So there's certainly been programs that have looked at therapeutic advances in that space. But we would with a new agent or a new molecule, it would be quite inappropriate for us to take a role as a sponsor.
So the TGA is 96% funded by pharmaceutical companies through fees. Now, albucidin is a naturally occurring substance. Can it be patented? I would say not.
Well, we'd have to take that on notice. It depends on the use, and patent law is quite complicated, but I can't answer that.
My point is, would it get a sponsor to make an application?
Well, again,
because drug companies rely a lot on patents and making excessive profits.
So. You would expect so, absolutely.
If it were proven to be highly effective, I would imagine that a drug company would be very interested in pursuing it. But
those drug companies have shown that they're only interested in profits, the major ones.
Please put it as a question.
Yeah, it is a question.
What was the question? Sorry, Senator.
Isn't that the case?
Oh, no. All companies, obviously, private companies all make a profit, but profits can often come by sponsoring highly effective new agents. That's where they make their biggest profit. So I think this is all highly speculative, Senator. I don't know that we can progress it much further.
The CSIRO has produced a guide into controlling antimicrobial resistance that assumes massive government power, including close monitoring and regulation of homes, pets, agriculture, waterways, new vaccines against diseases that used to be controlled by antibiotics. And conferences, of course. Antimicrobial resistance is being set up to be a massive government and pharmaceutical company gravy train. Why are you ignoring a probable solution to antimicrobial resistance? Do you want the power to order more vaccines, to wield more intrusive powers, to make more sales for Big Pharma, which is the history in the last few years?
Well, we reject that assertion, Senator. I completely accept the assertion that antimicrobial resistance is a significant problem, and one of the ways we have been for many years trying to combat it is to try and encourage prescribers and the use of antibiotics to reduce their use of antibiotics, which is not in the interest necessarily of the pharmaceutical industry. We are very keen to make sure that we limit the use of antibiotics to those situations when they are absolutely only essential. There's a lot of unnecessary prescription of antibiotics, and some of that, is a real problem. And we're certainly have a lot of interest in antimicrobial resistance, and any new agent, would be of interest to us. But we are not in a position to sponsor something like that.
Can I also add? Sorry, Tracy Duffy, Acting Deputy Secretary, Health Products Regulation Group. We are in collaboration with the CSIRO in advancing their work, and we have been involved with a number of CSIRO roundtables on this project that they're going through, and so we are working in lockstep with them.
Thank you. Let's turn to medical cannabis or medicinal cannabis. My office is getting reports that prescriptions of dried medical cannabis issued under the Pathways scheme are being endorsed with the phrase "for vaping," and that requires patients to also buy and use a vape. A doctor my office spoke to has advised this is a TGA instruction. Is that correct?
So medicinal cannabis, with the exception of 2 products, is not regulated as medicinal products by the TGA. They are available under a special access scheme, and it's the conditions of the special access scheme that the practitioner who is approved to prescribe adopts all of the the undertaking to consent patients, to understand the research, to advise on side effects and so forth. So the TGA does not regulate any of the medicinal cannabis products in Australia.
Do you require someone who uses medical cannabis in dried form to purchase a vape? The advice?
It's not our advice, no, and it would be coming from the medical practitioner if the medical practitioner felt that there was a substance that was better done as an ointment, as a sublingual tablet, as a spray, or as a vape. I don't know if you're able to add anything on the vaping devices for that.
In terms of how it's delivered, the method of delivery would be up to the treating practitioner to identify the most appropriate method for that patient.
Thank you. To list a product under the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods for prescription under Schedule 4, there's a prescribed process which is not legislative. The steps, timeframes, levels of proof of safety are all in regulation issued by the Secretary. Under delegated powers, and much of the process isn't even regulatory. It's administrative. Is that an accurate statement?
I need help from you on what's in the Act and what's in the regulations.
Someone stood up. You stood up. You're in trouble now.
We do have our thank you, Bridget.
Bridget Gilmore-Walsh, Principal Legal and Policy Advisor, Health Products Regulation Group. I didn't understand all elements of that question, but
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes.
To list a product under the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods for prescription under Schedule 4, there's a prescribed process which is not legislative. The steps, timeframes, levels of proof of safety are all in regulation issued by the Secretary under delegated powers, and much of the process isn't even regulatory, it's administrative. Is that an accurate statement?
I think that I don't know that that's an entirely accurate statement. Some of the process is set out in primary legislation, some of it's set out in delegated legislation, but yes, there are some administrative policies that support the administration of the Act.
Does the suspension of these processes by the Minister and or the Secretary during COVID prove that the ARTG, the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods process, is whatever the Secretary or the Minister says it is?
That's simply not the case. The Act and the Secretary's powers are bounded by the Act and instruments made under the Act, including regulations which are made by the Governor-General.
COVID vaccines were not manufactured under good manufacturing process, GMP, so even this basic requirement for the approval of a drug is just a preference, not a legislated requirement, is it not?
Senator Nick Henderson, Acting First Assistant Secretary of Medicine's Regulation Division. Sorry, Senator, for the provisional approvals of the vaccines, they needed to provide evidence that they were manufactured under good manufacturing practices.
But they weren't. So can you give us a copy of that evidence, please?
I'll have to take that on notice.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Referencing Section 26BF of the Therapeutic Goods Act 1989, this allows the Minister to direct the operations of the Secretary in respect of scheduling and listing of products. Minister, isn't it true that the Minister could downschedule medicinal cannabis to Schedule 4 and move the products approved for prescription under the Pathways program onto the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods right now if he wanted to? You might not intend on doing that, but it is within the Minister's power, isn't it?
I'll take that on notice, Senator Roberts.
I understand that the Minister could regulate right now to move medicinal cannabis to Schedule 4. Thank you, Minister. Minister, I've just got a couple more.
Oh, yes, I believe the witness said he was taking it on notice, but is that...
Yes, I'll just add that the usual process from, I don't believe, but we can take it on notice, I don't believe that that power supports that. The usual process is that there has to be a legislative instrument made under a power much further down in the Act to amend the poison standard.
The way I've been advised, I'm pretty confident that it's just a ministerial regulation.
We can consider that further, but that's not my general understanding.
Yeah. Thank you. Minister, my office checked all the state legislation on prescribing and found much commonality. The use of a simple statement such as, quote, prescriptions can be issued for anything listed in Schedule 4. The end of quote. There's no separate state list of drugs. If cannabis was downscheduled, medicinal cannabis was downscheduled, federally the states would actually need to introduce legislation to overrule this decision and then get that legislation to their own parliament. Is that correct?
I'll take that question on notice, Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Minister, could the bill introduced by Senator Hanson to downschedule medicinal cannabis be regulated right now, today, if the Minister chose to do so? In other words, the legislation is not needed, the Minister could just regulate.
I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Let's come back to, today. Today is the wonderful day to celebrate. Today is the date from June 1st, 2023, prescribing of oral ivermectin for off-label uses will no longer be limited to specialists such as dermatologists, etc. So it's back and can be used off-label. I must note, to keep the Secretary calm, that the TGA says it does not endorse off-label prescribing of ivermectin for the treatment of prevention of COVID-19. It doesn't do that, but it can be used for that. Craig Kelly, former Member of Parliament, contacted the Uttar Pradesh office in India, this is the state of India, Office of the Chief Minister, and asked for guidance on how Uttar Pradesh had successfully used ivermectin to control the virus, the COVID virus in Uttar Pradesh, and received great information on their success. If a Member of Parliament at the time can reach out like that to be better informed, why didn't the TGA reach out and be better informed on ivermectin?
TGA relies on the body of scientific evidence, with Dr. Lang and Professor Lang can talk about that. We rely on the published scientific evidence, not the statement of a politician in India. So, Professor Lang, do you want to sort of...
Thank you. I guess it comes back to my earlier point that a drug or a medicine that is, or a product that is on the ARTG is there for a specific indication. And in this case, the specific indication for ivermectin, for which there's been a dossier provided and evaluated by the TGA as robust, good science, clinical science, is that ivermectin is useful for the treatment of certain parasitic illnesses, be they gastrointestinal or skin-based. There is no evidence that has been presented to the TGA by the sponsor to demonstrate in any way, shape or form that ivermectin is useful in treating COVID-19. And if the sponsor would like to do so, we'd be happy to consider that, because that's the only way that the TGA is able to expand that indication.
Could I table these for discussion, please?
You can submit them to the committee for consideration. It's going to take a while to work through them by the look. Just to give you an indication, Senator Roberts, I'll also be seeking to rotate the call shortly.
Okay, just pull me up when you're ready. This is an affidavit
pretty ready. So maybe if this is the last.
Will I just introduce it while you're distributing it? Yeah. This is an affidavit from Dr. Pierre Corey in the United States. He has gone through this for many, many years, and he's compiled many, I think it's over 96 references that are praising ivermectin's use for treating COVID. It's been used in many, many countries, and it's stopped COVID in its tracks. It's not only been a cure, a treatment, there's been a prophylactic to prevent the spread of the disease. Are you aware, my last question, are you aware of any successful programs overseas that used ivermectin to control the pandemic? Now you've got the evidence, Ms. Langham.
Professor Langham,
Professor,
Senator.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. You know, obviously there's a very dense article here. There's a lot of different publications that are being referenced, and for me to pass judgment on this particular body of evidence, I'd need to take that on notice
I'm
and get
pleased
back
to
to
hear
you.
you say that, because I wouldn't want it done on the spur of the moment.
Certainly not.
Thanks, Senator Roberts.